Peterbot's solo games always start at South Slappy. It isn't the best drop on the map, but it's incredibly solid and gives you everything you need to win. Good metal, free meds, a capture point, and plenty of loot. In this game, you can see he is triple contested on the south side, but even with a grey Maven, he has the confidence to quickly find his opponent and take them out. He gains quick shield from the slap barrel, so he knows with a shotgun, meds, and material, he has more than enough to take out an opponent who has just landed. While Siphon meds are no longer in the game, Siphon material is, which is incredibly important, especially off spawn. Because Peterbot aggressively pushed this first player, he gains a massive material advantage over the third party. Using this, he quickly puts them down and now has this entire half of Slappy secured. While it's very tempting in solo victory finals to play super passive as only the win matters, smart aggression like this can keep you safer later. Instantly pushing these players means two things. Firstly, you don't have to worry about someone ratting behind walls while you try and loot, and secondly, it means the fight won't drag out, leading to a waste of material, meds, and even worse, attracting third parties. After securing his metal, Peterbot rotates to the south to farm his quick brick and wood, while also checking the holo chest. You'll notice he also prioritizes getting a gold MK Alpha rather than getting a gold Maven. Peterbot knows he will drop even a gold Maven for a grey Havoc, so even though it may be an upgrade now for his next fight, he'd rather play the long game. This right here is one of the biggest keys to Peterbot's success this entire game, the flare gun. Recently re-added to the game, I will convince you throughout this video why it is one of the strongest items in the game right now, and if you're not using it, it is why you are not winning. Even while capturing the flag, which will cover the entire POI, Peterbot uses this flare to scout out his surroundings to make sure he isn't being pushed. Even after securing the flag, he still continues to flare gun his way south, making sure no one is hiding ahead of him. There is no mobility in the game right now, so flare guns is one of the best items you can carry for your third slot. Using the information gathered from the flare gun, he knows he can sneak up and get an easy beam on this opponent. He again flare guns him to make sure he can track his movement throughout the build fight. After being pressured, his opponent opts to build for high ground. Many players, especially with Peterbot's mechanics, would be tempted to try and build battle this player, but Peterbot decides instead to find a good layout that isn't reinforced and chops him out. This is incredibly important in the current meta. Outside of soaring sprints or a very well-timed Cybertron cannon, there are no fall damage saves in the game. This is not Katana, ODM, Spider-Man meta, but people still build battle like it is. With items in the game that can instantly chop you and no way to prevent fall damage, you should almost never build battle players. He closes this fight out with very standard box fighting. He takes the wall while the player is behind a stair, knowing he can't pre-fire him. Then once he's taken the wall, hits the right-hand edit and positions his character to the left of the stair. This is so that he can't be shot while he replaces it with a cone. Then, using his piece control, hits a heavy shot before making a more aggressive top row edit. His opponent, being smart though, waits until Peter resets the wall, leaving its durability at 0 so he can instantly shotgun and take it back. He assumes the player will try and get out of the box and pre-pieces his right, but sadly the player goes back left and back into old builds. Peter stays calm and waits until the player panics and runs into his old builds and gets stuck for the easy elimination. While I wouldn't always recommend playing as aggressively as Peterbot, especially if you don't need anything from the fight, if you are going to take a fight, doing so on dead side of zone gives you far more security from third parties, but also means you have time to refarm your materials as you rotate in. Once caches begin to spawn around the map, if yours is not in an advantageous position, you can begin to look for other players capturing theirs. Sadly, this player has already captured it by the time Peter arrives, but he's still rewarded with an extra bit of metal, and if he did need any extra meds, this would be a good way to find it. Most players who already have good meds will pick up the slurps and often leave minis, big pots, or med mist behind. It's a great way to find extra meds if you're running low. Rotating through the new jungle biomes can be extremely dangerous, with people easily able to hide and rat with all the cover. Peter, knowing this, opts to use the vines to take the high ground into the trees. However, he again finds a flare gun and instead of carrying it for later, decides to use all charges, completely scoping out his surroundings. With this information, he now knows he can drop down, gaining the mud slide effect and confidently rotate through this area safely. Utilizing soaring sprints, he avoids walking through water so as not to lose the mud effect on his feet. It may seem simple, but this mud is one of the only forms of mobility in the game. Do your best to keep it and use it for as long as you can. Peter very deliberately boxes up on the new slurp plan. He could have just hit it once to top up his shield and rotated by, but because he has used a lot of his brick and wood, he knows he can easily re-farm it in this area. Peter is so confident he begins farming in full view of opponents, knowing that with the slurp plant boxed up, he can gain 25 shield every 5 seconds. So even if they do tag him, saving his shield and costing him nothing. After being jumped in on while rotating, Peterbot gets a free refresh. As this player is carrying a flare gun, Peterbot again instantly uses it to figure out who is around him and if he is being pushed. Once he realizes he isn't, he checks what extra material he has and tarps himself into zone with the extra hard mats. He once again uses the flare gun to make sure no one has ratted into his tarp to be extra careful. Peterbot loves the flare gun. He even goes so far as to take it to the front of his tarp so he can use it again on his next rotate. He is comfortable early rotating as he sees there are few players ahead of him and only needs to cover his back from high ground. In a zero mobility meta, knowing who is around you is crucial for conserving material and staying safe. He finds an old body of loot on the ground with extra material, which he then uses to pre-tarp into zone, claiming as much space as possible, costing him nothing and giving him a great position going into rotating zones. Zone pulls relatively close, and what Peterbot does next is incredibly important. It may look like he's just spraying at enemies' walls, but he is trying to find out where his opponent is and condition them to move further away from the direction he is about to rotate, controlling their positioning and movement so they aren't able to push or spray him when he goes to move. He also uses this pressure to try and get this player on his layer lobby focused, eliminating a threat to his rotate from a safe position inside his box and only costing him some mini ammo. However, once this player runs, Peterbot realizes the fight isn't worth it and starts rotating to make sure he gets in before he can get held. Using soaring sprints and staying elevated behind old builds, he makes this rotate using very minimal builds and only using wood, saving his hard materials for once he is in zone. Down to only 75 builds, he could continue to rotate playing safe and play out his mats, but he instead uses this time to look for a refresh. Fighting players beneath you is the easiest way to keep yourself safe from being lobby focused and still putting out pressure. He even manages to take this wall from above without even dropping down, meaning his opponent can't even see him while he's being pressured. Much like earlier, despite hitting this player hard and wanting a refresh, once the player builds away and his chance of being lobby focused goes up, he gives up on the fight and looks for an easier target. Peterbot is one of the most mechanical players and an incredibly good fighter. But if you tunnel vision a target for too long and end up being lobby focused, your mechanics won't matter. He luckily sees Bucky, who has just picked up an elimination and hasn't claimed the box to secure the loot, giving him easy access into one pump and get a double refresh. He now has everything he needs to win the game. He yet again uses the extra material to build himself a strong position, securing high ground, and also once again uses the flare gun to gain information of his opponents before tarping in. You'll also notice he dropped his minis for floppers, as with 4 slurp juices, minis will almost be pointless, and with no siphon, white heals are far more beneficial in endgame to play zone and get yourself out of sticky situations. From here, Peterbot prioritizes staying backside of zone, using soaring sprints to jump over old builds, saving material and keeping himself safe. Using his pistol to constantly apply pressure, he is looking to see if anyone looks up for high ground. You need to be especially aware of what players are looking at you in the current meta, as the Breacher shotgun and Cybertron can very quickly see you lose high ground. However, both these items aren't even supposed to be in competitive, so could be vaulted anytime now. With only 7 wood builds left, Peterbot makes an excellent decision to drop back into zone, playing his slurps and floppers. With only 3 players, this game won't be going to a long heal off. So instead of saving his meds and putting himself in a position to be chopped and double teamed by staying in zone, he can find a better angle by dropping into Storm to make this fight a 1v1. At this point, it's unclear if he has the med advantage over his opponent and doesn't want to risk losing the heal off. He pops another slurp and begins pushing in closer to fight, making sure to save what little builds he has. He stays calm, using his meds to force his opponent to make the first move, and once he knows he's out of material and meds, takes safe angles, chips away at his health before taking the easy win.